This is Esther Lin for MMAfighting.com, and I wanted to share some of my favorite images from UFC 162. To kick off the week, UFC held its open workouts at the Wynn Hotel. After Anderson Silva finished many demonstrations, a few kids got up on stage and Silva faced off with one here, making that classic kung fu movie pose complete with a battle cry. Despite the very pretty setting, it was very dark facing inwards with the sunlight behind the mats. I had set up a remote flash just to Silva's left, and it neatly complements the glow from the outside. I asked each fighter who came to the interview room for a portrait. We use them as front plates for the videos sometimes. Most people do a quiet smile or a mean face, but it's Anderson Silva, so he grinned gregariously. This was just sitting on the opposite side of a room UFC had set up for one-on-one TV interviews, alone. It reminds me of the monolith in 2001. I like the darkness behind it. Mark Munoz is best known outside his ground and pound for being one of the nicest guys in the business. When I asked him for a portrait, he made a series of funny faces for me before settling on a smile. Cub Swanson is a friendly person, but he does have a very solemn expression. This isn't even his serious face. It's actually fairly blank. He gave me a mean expression after this image, but I felt this was pretty chilling in its own way. At the press conference the next day, everything was pretty much by the book, until after the face-off when Anderson Silva offered to share holding of the belt with challenger Chris Weidman. Weidman showed visible, pleasant surprise, enjoying this moment. Lots of people think it bad luck to touch a title trophy before winning, but that's just silly. It's weigh-in day, and this is the first time a live audience gets to see the new, improved Mark Munoz. Mark was very frank about his battle with post-fight depression that held him hostage to overeating, and here we see him shredded, triumphant over those demons. UFC Fan Expo Week means tons more fans in town, and we are treated to the extra-large setup for weigh-ins. I love the giant banners flanking the stage, spotlights, and smoke. I have this same image from the year before, too, except with Silva and Sonnen. I hope to have this image next year as well, to see how it may change. And then, the infamous face-off/kiss. Well, there's not really much to say. What I like best is the difference in expression between Joe Rogan's analytical stare and Dana White's amused smile. Fight night started off with a bang when Mike Pierce finished David Mitchell and former Strikeforce fighter Brian Melanson made an emphatic UFC debut, knocking out Seth Basinski with a Fedor-esque jump into guard fist first. This was my favorite image from the fight though, where in the opening round, Melanson hit Basinski so hard in the body as to invoke pain in his face. And in the very next bout, Edson Barboza finished Rafael Oliveira with an unceasing barrage of leg kicks that made the most brutal sound in combination with the crowd's sympathetic gasps. Barboza is jubilant while Rafael Oliveira turns to his side, shrinking in excruciating pain. Again with Cub Swanson's expressions. He has a great stare across the octagon at Dennis Siver before the fight begins. Like many fighters, he paces back and forth, eyes locked, stalking his prey. Swanson found his rhythm in the last round against Siver and continually battered him with punches that made a fantastic crack each time they landed. The sound made me wince. Sometimes punch faces are more dramatic, more painful looking than the actual impact, but this one is fairly accurate to the amount of force Siver's jaw was absorbing. This fight was non-stop action, and I had too many great photos from it, but this one is my favorite because it best encapsulates Frankie Edgar for me. Edgar's crisp boxing is exemplified here in this sharp body punch, and there is a clear difference in size between the two featherweights. Edgar is a smaller fighter, but he is using it to his advantage here, digging into Charles Oliveira's body, teeth gritted in effort. And then, the main event. Anderson Silva waits here, in his usual pre-fight crouch. I'm shooting from just behind where Chris Weidman is waiting, likely looking right back across the cage at the champ. While some might cling to the idea that Anderson Silva got caught, prior to that fateful second round, Chris Weidman was beating him. This is in the first round, the first time Weidman took Silva down. I always straighten my shots, but they were too close for me to fit into my frame with the horizon level, so I decided to make Weidman my horizon line. I find it emphasizes the impact. Here are a few of many taunts that Silva tried against Weidman, and actually, it worked a little, because Weidman's pace slowed as he watched Silva walk away, beckoning him with his right hand and then backing off, arms open. Silva continued to taunt, going so far as to feign injury after Weidman grazed him seconds earlier. This is the moment after Weidman flicked out his right hand, winding his left, and you can see Silva is pretty much leaning back as far as he can. And then, this is the moment right after that left hook landed across Silva's jaw. I have to say, at first, I thought it was still part of Anderson Silva's show. I thought he intended to fall until I zeroed in on his eyes and realized they were rolled back. I love the ferocity in Chris Weidman's face. He knows his next step. And the next step was to fly in, much as Melançon had done in the prelims, Weidman's fist blurring despite the 1/1000th of a second shutter speed I'd chosen. Silva's arms are open, no longer trying to goad Weidman into a mistake, and making no attempt to defend himself. This is what cemented the end for me. After the belt ceremony, the speeches, and the thank yous, Weidman goes out to the crowd where much of his extended family waited for him, and embraced before being rushed along by the whirlwind that comes with winning the UFC title. When Anderson Silva left the cage, a few of his friends were waiting, faces wrought with tears and sadness. Silva smiled and consoled them as they hugged him firmly, wanting to confirm for themselves that their friend was all right. After the post-fight press conference, Weidman posed with his belt at the behest of many reporters crowding around the stage. As he was about to leave, Ariel Helwani, hand in the foreground of the picture here, asked him to do the Matt Serra pose, a la UFC 69, and he obliged. This is Esther Lin for MMAfighting.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in Rio.